Welcome to the Power Up Your Marriage and Business podcast. We're your hosts, Robert and Kaylee Fukui. I know we're supposed to say we created this podcast for you, but we really created this for us. Because one of the power struggles we witnessed growing up and now dealing with in the present is balancing the needs of the business with priorities of marriage. Does this sound familiar?
As children of entrepreneurs, we're often on the receiving end of that struggle. Parents worked so hard to provide that they did not have time for us. We realized it wasn't their fault. They did only what they knew. But not wanting to repeat the past, we've been intentional about building a business that we run as opposed to it running us.
Every day we fight to keep the priorities the priority: faith, family, and finance, or the business. Some think it's impossible, but we say it's possible. You just need to challenge the false belief that a successful business only comes at the sacrifice of your family. It doesn't have to happen that way, and we know we're not the only couple to think this way and achieve it.
If you listen to some of our past episodes and tune in for future ones, you will hear from some amazing marriage experts and entrepreneur couples that have been able to build a thriving marriage and prosperous business at the same time.
So that's why we created this podcast, to be in the front row and hear from others that have gone before us. And from time to time, we'll share what has worked for us as well. But we know there's more to learn and want to take you along for the ride with us. We may never get it perfect, but with intention, we can all build a thriving marriage and prosperous business. So thank you for listening. Sit back, get comfortable, and let's power up your marriage and business. Hey, Power Couples, welcome to this week's episode.
Hi, Power Couple family. How are you?
Ready to have some fun, honey?
I'm ready. Oh my gosh, this is going to be a hoot.
Because you know who we have on the show today? Kevin and Steph Mason.
Oh my gosh, they are hysterical.
They are podcast hosts of the nationally syndicated podcast, Tell Us a Good Story. Mm-hmm. And we were on their show. But now we get to return the favor, and they're going to tell us, they do have great stories. That's why they have a podcast called Tell Us a Good Story.
But there's just one after another. I'm like, oh my gosh, who has that many at such a young age?
And especially, I think Steph just turned 30 the other week. And in their early years of marriage, they dealt with some serious tragedies.
Early on,
that could really knock off any marriage.
One could.
Right? Because, you hear, like, a lot of times marriages break up because some kind of health issue, some kind of tragedy happens in the relationship, losing a child, or one of them gets really sick or something. There's some kind of personal tragedy that because one or both can't handle it, they end up divorcing.
Right.
And here, Kevin and Steph, they have about 4 of those tragedies. Well,
I can't wait to hear it all. We've listened to their podcast. That's how we know some of it already. But
we read their book.
I'm sure, and the book.
They have a great book.
The book is pretty funny as well.
Yeah, and Kevin's an accountant.
I know, who would have thought? Because you would be in the other room laughing, and I'm like, honey, what's going on in there? And you're like, oh, I'm reading the book.
Kevin's pretty funny. I'm like, I don't know if I've met an accountant that funny.
I know. I'm like, oh, he's reading the book again. He's laughing.
And I know he's very athletic because he was an athlete, in his younger years, as well as Steph. And they're a hoot. And Steph's a nurse. And so the stories that you're going to hear, number one, it's going to make you laugh, cry, everything. But ultimately also show you that as husband and wife, you can overcome anything. You can do anything together. You can overcome anything. And don't let a minor tragedy or major tragedy get in between you.
Right.
And they certainly did it with grace. And I can't believe they're, here to tell us a story, but it's amazing.
Yeah. You guys are going to really enjoy this, and I can't wait to hear what they have to say.
Yeah, so definitely stay tuned. This is going to be a great interview, and you're going to be entertained, but also encouraged. And yeah, so ready?
Yes.
All right, let's open the doors and let them in. All right, we are here with Kevin and Steph in our, air quotes, studio.
Yay! We're so excited to have them.
Yeah, welcome, Kevin and Steph. It's we're going to have a good time, I think.
We're having a great time.
Thank you. We're thrilled to be here.
We're so
Appreciate
excited.
the invite.
Yes.
Oh, no, and we get to turn the tables a little bit because we are on, because we've been listening to your podcast as well. We haven't listened to every episode, but our favorite is episode 143.
Do you know which one that is?
Was that your episode?
Yes, it was.
It was like, Steph, please. It's like, Steph, please get this one right. Please get this one right.
Kev didn't say
Nailed
anything.
it.
Kevin's thinking, I hope Stephanie knows what it is because I don't.
It's like, It's like, Dog the Bounty Hunter. No, that wasn't it, Steph.
I would have been okay. I would have forgiven you not knowing that, because that's our little joke. But we're privileged to be on your podcast, of course, and we had to repay the favor, not just because it's the thing to do, but really, one, we just enjoyed becoming friends with you, not just on the podcast, but in the texts we've had, the phone conversations we had. But we are disappointed about one thing, Steph.
Yes.
Don't say about the shirt. Don't say about the shirt. Is it the shirt?
You didn't wear the shirt. You didn't wear the shirt.
You guys, I know. Kevin's like, are you wearing the shirt? I'm like, I'm getting the shirt. And then I didn't have time to get the shirt because
so this is a great opportunity for our listeners to get a little insight into who Kevin and Steph are.
Yes.
If you fill us in on the inside joke about this shirt.
Yes, please.
Go ahead, babe.
Oh boy, this is one of those moments that, as a husband, you want your wife to forget, and it keeps coming back up. And Robert and Kaylee do not help my cause because they keep bringing this back up. But when we started Tell Us a Good Story,
our podcast,
the now national radio show, initially it was to be with a buddy of mine who's like one of the funniest dudes I know, right? And he has some amazing stories. He's so funny. And just logistically, he couldn't do it. And I'm glad he said no, because I'll tell you what, this is a lot more time than what you think when you start a podcast and when you start doing it weekly. Then I thought, okay, I go on an annual road trip with some of my buddies to an Ohio State football game. And the whole time, I'm just laughing hysterically at three of my friends. And so I thought, okay, another great idea would be, why don't I have my three buddies with me telling stories? Mm-hmm. That didn't work out.
No.
So
then he goes, he's like, Steph,
no.
You want to be my co-host?
Who's left on my Rolodex?
Yes. He's like, anybody.
Any takers?
Steph?
Any takers?
Yep. So I make the joke that I was his fifth choice. So what do my best friends, Robert and Kaylee, do? They give me fifth choice T-shirt. And it's awesome. And I'm going to wear it.
Yes, I know. That is true. But you don't help us forget that moment either.
When I wear the shirt.
Yes.
When I wear the shirt every time we record.
That was the fifth choice.
Yeah, it was the fifth choice.
But I wouldn't have. That wouldn't have happened. The shirt wouldn't have happened. But because when you rolled out our episode, we're listening to it. And at the end, I think it was towards the end of the episode, you guys brought up the story about the fifth choice. Uh-huh. And I don't know how, and we're at our mutual friend Dennis and Susie's house in Austin. And somehow the thing came up about, we should make a shirt out of this.
Yeah, because all of a sudden she was in there doing crafting. She's got a Cricut, which is a crafting tool. And it just came to me, we got to make her a shirt that says time number. I can't guess. And then it has your logo on it, too. Tell us a good story.
It's amazing.
And I'm like, we got to send that to her so she can wear it. Because you said you wanted a shirt that said that. So I was trying to help.
And you guys nailed it. When you guys, if you could have seen our reactions, I'm squealing. Kevin's mouth is open like, are you kidding me?
If you could have seen my reaction, because I opened it up first. And I was like, and I just thought it was your book. So I open it up, I see your book, and then I see something else inside the package. I open that up, and I'm just like, oh, man, Steph is going to love this, right? And, of course, she did later on.
Loved it.
But thankfully, she has not worn it to church yet. So that's good.
Hey, there's an idea right there, Steph.
It is an idea. I'm like, that's actually a great idea.
Yeah. Valentine's Day.
Easter Sunday, Christmas, all the major holidays.
Yes. But I'll tell you what, we've gotten great feedback from episode 143. People loved the story of how you met and the going to therapy, couples therapy together, and we got a lot of great feedback from those stories. So we appreciate you guys being on with us. So thank you.
You're welcome. Anyways, we had a lot of fun and had a lot of fun doing the shirt. We had a whole brainstorming session.
Yeah.
Now, Dennis was trying to be Mr. Polite.
Yes.
He was actually trying to save you, Kevin.
He was.
Was he? Okay.
But we overrode him.
It was 3. It was 3-1.
He was, that wouldn't be appropriate and all that. I was
Uh-huh.
like, hey, they already talked about it on the podcast. It's all
And
over.
I'm like, and that's exactly what she calls it, you know. I mean, I came in fifth, so we
and
gotta
it's,
put
and
that
it's
down.
just funny. It's just
Fifth
funny.
choice.
But
Fifth choice.
and just to clear the air too, Kevin, you are great. Because
Okay,
I know
never say-
sometimes they're all, oh, Steph, it's all about Steph, you know. But no, okay, we always had, when you were vetting us, you know, to do your podcast, I mean, we just had a great time, and so we
Yeah,
just
we
fell in
did.
love with you, Kevin. And you definitely hold your own. It really takes the two of you to really make a great podcast and to make it as popular as it is. You guys just work
thank
so
you.
well together.
yeah.
I was
and-
waiting for the punchline there.
No, see,
When you said Kevin, you're great, I was waiting like, but or however.
no. See, I'm just letting it sit.
That's good.
So,
Oh, thank you.
We'll do that later at the end of the podcast. No, just kidding. No. And so normally, you know, because the topic of this podcast is power up your marriage and business, we like to ask the couples on our show how they met. But of course, that's, you know, the main topic of your book, how you met her where. so
Yes.
you definitely have to read the book, get the book and read this. It is hilarious. But we just really want to dive into, you know, we didn't want to make it just about the book, but at the same time, I mean, there's so much into us and there's so much other, I mean, questions that'll come out of it. So we really, when we were preparing for this, we were like, we're not going to ask necessary questions about the book, but it's the questions that came out of just reading this book.
Okay.
It's the backstory we
I
want to
already
hear
have
about.
one.
Oh, good.
I know. I know you do. But before you get started,
Oh, okay.
because I just want to pitch the book right off the bat. And you know, I read. I'm not a voracious reader, but I read. And this one I couldn't put down. And as
Oh, he
Kaylee
was
would attest,
laughing all the time. I'm like, oh, he's reading the book again.
2 to 3 days,
That's good.
couldn't put it down. I mean, the way you guys put together was hilarious. And to give our listeners just a little taste of what this book is like and what they'll
Okay.
experience, I want to read the endorsements in the back. Okay.
All right.
Endorsement number 1. When Kevin told me he was writing a book, I was shocked. I didn't think he could write something longer than a children's book. I'm guessing there are a bunch of pictures in this. Ron Mason, Kevin's father. Endorsement number 2.
Okay, this is good.
I have thought for a few years now that Kevin and Steph should write a book about their lives. I just hope I get to choose who plays me in the movie. Katie Keller-Schnetzer, Stephanie's sister.
Of course.
Yes.
Endorsement number 3. I think my buddy Kevin has now officially written...
I didn't get through reading it.
I think my buddy Kevin has now officially written more books than he's read. Adam Bennett, Kevin's friend.
So, as a first-time author, right? Typically, I mean, you see these testimonials of all these celebrities and people on these books, right? Well, when we did this, we didn't know anybody, right? So I was like, Steph, who we're going to get to do a testimonial for this? So I just took 3 quotes, right, from people close to us, my dad, my best friend, or one of my best friends, and then your sister, and put that on the back. And, yeah, it's been kind of a
Has
funny
great
response.
feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's hilarious. And so that kind of gives you a little bit of flavor of what this book you'll experience. Obviously, there's a lot of humor in this, but it's also really and just purely entertaining. But also, it's also for those of you that could use a little hope right now and encouragement.
Right.
And in this crazy world, who can't use that? Because what you guys have experienced and gone through is just amazing. And the fact that literally you're still alive and also married.
Right.
I mean, here's
And have a family.
here's the highlights of this book. They've gone through electrocution. Stephanie is a registered nurse, and in the operating room, she got electrocuted. Not like a little shock zap, but where they could actually smell the electrocution coming out of her,
Smell her.
coming out, exuding through her body. I mean, that's serious, right? And a hole, burnt through a couple metal plates. Then the brain tumor, brain surgery, being told you're not going to be able to have kids twice, right? Miscarriage, and then cancer. Again, any one of these obviously could have killed you, but any one of these could have taken your marriage out. I mean, we've heard, and I know you've heard stories where these couples, when, one spouse goes through something like just one of these, and the other spouse just can't handle it and just checks out
Right,
and then
leaves.
divorced,
Yep.
right? But the fact that you went through all of these and stayed together and obviously appear to be just stronger now more than ever is just amazing. And so just want to hats off to you guys. And that's kind of part of what we want to delve into you with this is, how did you do it? How did you navigate? Just take one of these instances. How were you able to navigate? Because I would imagine there was some really challenging times emotionally, spiritually, mentally between the two of you, and maybe a few arguments here and there.
Well, and health issues cause a lot of stress, right? When
Very
someone's
much.
not in good
Very much.
health.
Well, the first thing that happened was I married a unicorn, right? And so I call Steph my unicorn because I didn't realize someone like this actually existed in life. But when we were going through like the electrocution and the cancer and everything else you just mentioned, oh my gosh, it's such heavy stuff. And you have such rough days. And as a couple, one thing that helped was when I was down, Steph was up, right? And she was like my biggest cheerleader. When Steph was having a rough day, I became her biggest cheerleader, right? And I was helping encourage her and kind of get through that tough time, right? Every single health issue, it's been like one of us in those tough moments cheering each other on. Hey, this isn't temporary. This isn't permanent. This is temporary. We're going to get through this. We're going to get on the other side. It's okay. And we're going to have an amazing story to share once we get through this. But I remember, and I'll let Steph share her side of the story, but I remember, like you said, there's rough times. When I was at the hospital when Steph was going through brain surgery and had that brain tumor, we'd been dealing with this for years by this point, right?
With the electrocution.
With the electrocution
and then the
and tumors, and doctors saying we wouldn't have any children and all that. And I remember they wheeled her in to surgery, and it ended up being like 8-hour surgery. And before they went back there, they pulled me aside and said, Mr. Mason, just want to let you know the risk of brain surgery. The woman that you know right now, your wife, when she comes out post-surgery, she may be completely different. She may have a completely different personality. She may not remember you. She may not have feelings for you. Things may be completely different. And you're just like, are you kidding me? Like, the woman I married a few hours from now may have a completely different personality.
Wow.
So like, yes, that's the risk we have. And so at that point as a husband, Robert, I try to fix things. I try to solve problems.
Right.
I try to get the answers. And so that's what I was doing throughout this whole process, right? Trying to get stuff to the right surgeons, the right doctors, building this career, right, to support a family, all this. And at that point, none of it mattered. Like, the people we knew, or however much money we made, or the doctors who are practicing medicine, right? They're not the ultimate,
Right.
end all be all. They're not the ultimate healer. It was like none of this mattered. And so I remember I went into a corner in that hospital, and I just had a moment with God, and I was like, God, I'm done. I give my wife to you. I surrender my wife to you. Me trying to fix all of this, me trying to solve all these problems. I'm going to these appointments. I don't even know half the stuff these doctors are telling me, right? I'm not a medical person. I'm a finance guy. I'm a CPA, accounting. I can't hardly track what they're even telling me. God, I give her to you. Do what only you can do. And then 8 hours later, Steph came out and was woke up from surgery. And as you can tell, her personality is still awesome, right? And she still loved me and still knew my name. And it was amazing, right? Just amazing what God can do, the things that God can do, and how we rely on our faith to get through every one of these situations.
Wow. So, Steph, like when you're going through, because obviously after electrocution, it really affected you, mentally as well as physically, emotionally. Were you even aware of what's really going on with you?
You mean with the tumor?
Or
just during the electrocution?
Yeah, because I know I read in the book that, just short-term memory, you had issues with short-term memory. So there's periods where I'm like, how much of this were you really aware of what was really going on?
No, that's a great question. So when I was electrocuted, I remember everything. I could tell you verbatim exactly what happened, where I was at. But ever since the electrocution, new symptoms would always arise. Like after the electrocution, like you could just look at my abdomen and it just quivered for weeks from the amount of voltage that I had received. And then just every few months, new symptoms would arise. I had severe headaches that would always put me in the ER. And they eventually, just to keep me out of the ER, they started giving me injections of morphine that I could do myself just so I wouldn't have to be in the ER anymore. Wow. Because these concoctions that they would give me in the ER would knock me out for 24 hours because the amount of pain was just so severe. Then I would start having hallucinations, then short-term memory loss, then cognitive thinking issues to where I could not add 1 + 2 without using my fingers. Wow. And I started going through like severe anxiety and like some depression, minor depression, just because I could not believe this was my life. But I would remember like going out to dinner and Kevin would have to use the restroom and I would just squeeze his leg, like, don't leave me. I mean, we'd be going out with our best friends, but the thought of me saying the wrong thing, it like scared me because, I would ask somebody the same question 2 or 3 times. And it was just, I hated that feeling.
Yeah, I remember like going out to dinner. If we went out to dinner with you guys during that time period, she would be like, hey, Robert, how's your job going? And then you would answer that. And then 30 seconds later, hey, Robert, didn't you start a new job? How's that going? And then you'd answer again. And then a minute would go by. Hey, how's your job going, Robert? And so it would throw people off because when you would look at Steph from the outside, she looks fine. It's not like she's got a broken arm or a leg. It was literally a brain injury and electrocution. So once you started talking to her, you realized, okay, something's off here.
It was like 51st dates.
It was
very similar to that.
Absolutely was. And I couldn't even, there would be situations where I couldn't name or think of something. Like I'd ask Kevin to like open the door for me and I meant the window to like let air into the house, or I just couldn't speak the way I needed to speak. And they did so many tests on me and they found out that what had happened is it fried the whole front and left part of my brain. And so there's like the cognitive thinking issues was a part of that. And then my cycle stopped, and it was just one thing after another that we had to endure. And we would talk to doctors. Doctors were just guessing what was going on, what they could do for me. I was on so many different types of medications. Nothing would work. We finally contacted the National Institute of Health in New York because they do such rare cases. I was like, well, they could help me. I mean, I was on this was my final chance, right? Like, at least they're going to be able to help me. And they called me back and they said, Mrs. Mason, we're so sorry. We have to liken you to lightning strike victims, and they don't survive what you did. So we don't even have answers for you. And at that point, it was just a kick in the teeth. And I'm like, okay, God,
feel hopeless.
This is you.
Hopeless.
You've got to help me because I have no other resources here.
Wow. So Kevin, this has got to be, challenging on you because you're the fixer. You want to take care of everything, and this is out of your... There's nothing out of your hands. There's nothing, and you can see your wife, you love her, but this isn't 100% who she is.
Right, and you feel awful because this happened just over 2 years into our marriage, and so you realize, okay, we both went to college, got our degrees, you got your nursing license, we're doing everything we can to prepare for family, and then it's just like, okay, what Steph went through, she didn't sign up for that, right? For doctors to say, okay, having a family, it's just probably not in the cards for you guys, right? Just kind of forget about that idea. That is so tough to swallow, especially when you're thinking of your wife and seeing your wife go through that. So all those things you rattled off, it's funny because we've had this conversation. Would you rather be the person going through a life-threatening situation, or would you rather be the spouse of someone going through a life-threatening situation? So, like, what's worse? Because we've both been in that chair, and hands down, it's the spouse of the person going through it, right? It is so hard as the spouse watching your wife go through something. And you said it was brutal for you watching me going through the cancer treatments and diagnosis and all that, because you really do feel helpless, and that's where you have to rely on your faith. And that's when we really learn to trust God through these just life-threatening situations.
And with, you're talking about the scenario where Steph would forget, like literally the minute after you answer a question. but I would imagine, did it ever frustrate you, Kevin? Like, I mean, it's the issue, the issue at hand, but yet when this keeps happening, did it ever frustrate you?
Or you're afraid to leave her home by herself.
Yeah, well, here's what really frustrated me is she'd have these memory lapses, but if I would forget to call her on my way home, she would not forget that for some reason. So I would get home and she'd be like, you were supposed to call me on your way home. I'm like, I did call you on your way home. Like, what are you talking about? And then she's like, no, you didn't. And you'd go check your phone. I'm like, oh, see, no, you didn't. So
he
for
tried
some
to use
reason,
it his advantage, and it
never worked.
Never worked.
It never worked to my advantage, ever. And I wish, Robert, I wish I were lying, but I actually did that.
I asked this because Kaylee will sometimes forget certain things, but then she'd always say, "Oh, my memory's not that good." And I go, "Your memory is so good. I think you have selective memory." But I go, there are things she will remember, certain things like what I did, or certain things that were withdrawn from the checking account. I mean, she like right on the spot, right? And
back in January 6th of
1984, and then I'm like, what? And I'm like,
you wrote a check for $20,000.
She'll be like, what? I'm like, what are you talking about? So, and then there's these other things that she says she forgets. I'm like, no, your memory's fine. So that's why I had to ask that question. That's hilarious. So selective memory loss, right?
Yes, selective amnesia.
Kevin tried to use it.
Couldn't use it to my advantage.
And it backfires. That's hysterical.
Yeah. So, I mean, so how did you deal with some of these, because the arguments ensue, right? So how did you deal with some of these little conflicts? Because, teaching us over here, even you guys clearly are dealing with life-threatening situations, but even in the midst of that, you still have moments of conflict, right? And how did you deal with those things?
How did we
deal with that? How did you deal with conflict with me?
It was hard.
Patience.
I'm not going to lie. It was hard because, especially with the electrocution, it would wear me out.
Yeah.
Like it took, having your brain fried, and then those neurons and nerves and synapses, like they were trying to go back together. Like my body was trying to heal. So I would be exhausted. I mean, just doing the littlest thing, I would be so tired. So Kevin would be like, do you want to do this? And I'm like, no, I can't. So it took a lot of, like he said, patience.
Yeah.
But it was frustrating. I'm sure it was frustrating to be with me and, him wanting to do, like he said, we were 2 years into our marriage.
Yeah.
So, we were super active. We were both athletes in college. We were always on the go, wanting to do things, wanting to have fun. And then all of a sudden it just stopped.
Here's the conflict we have today. All right. So one of the things with my wife that I would say is a superpower of hers is her pain tolerance. Okay. But she does not have any sympathy for me if I'm going through anything. All right. So here's what will happen.
That's the coach in her.
Like a few months ago. Like I'm having back spasms where I can't hardly get off the chair, get out of the bed, whatever. And Steph would be like, "Oh, are you the one who got electrocuted? I'm sorry. Are you the one who went through brain surgery? Oh, I'm sorry."
It's a back spasm.
And you can't top it. You cannot top that.
Can't.
Are you the one that has 3 kids?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I'm
when
sorry.
I wasn't supposed to.
Yes.
You have air quote. You got back spasms. Okay, I'm so sorry.
You poor guy.
Are you gonna be okay?
Yep.
So that's the conflict we run in today because there is zero sympathy from my wife for anything I go through.
She uses all that empathy when she's a nurse,
She gives
right?
it all away.
Yes.
So she gives it all the way during 9 to 5.
Not for home.
And at home, I'm done.
Yes.
Yeah, buck up.
Yes.
Chump.
Buck up, honey.
You got this.
Take a tough pill. You're fine. That's typically her response.
So, so I ask these questions because even as normal couples who haven't dealt with some of these life-threatening situations have conflicts, and how do you deal with those things? And so even you think, oh well, she's got electrocuted, or she's going through cancer. Of course, Kevin should be empathetic, and of course, Steph should be empathetic of him when he has his lymphoma. But really, there's always those periods of conflict, regardless of how serious or minute those issues are, which goes to the issue is, unlike your case, a lot of the typical marriage challenges or conflicts are really minute in scope. Mm-hmm. So it's
very
really
much.
about
Yes.
what matters most. So how do you guys view life now? You're obviously past that, and hopefully none of these things are going to happen for a really long time. How do you view life now that you've gone through all these life-threatening and life challenges?
Kevin came up with something when he was going through his cancer, and it has truly changed our perspective. And his quote is, next steps. What's the next steps? Because when you look at the big picture, it's overwhelming. It's, I can't do this. But if you can just take the next step, you can do that. Even if I can just get out of bed, just get out of bed. Mm-hmm. If that's the one thing you can do, you've accomplished something. Mm-hmm. And then once you accomplish that, then what's the next step? You can do it, just baby steps. But if you look at the whole picture, it can be overwhelming. Yeah,
and I learned that. So when I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a form of blood cancer, they called me at work and told me the diagnosis. And it was the same exact diagnosis that my grandmother had passed away from when I was in middle school.
Oh, wow.
And typically that type of cancer is in like elderly people, not at the time. I think I was 36 at the time. So it was abnormal for me to be diagnosed with that. So I left work late in the afternoon, driving, didn't know where to go, just pulled off in the parking lot, and I did the worst thing possible, and that was Google non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which you should not do, right? Because the worst possible things come up when you do that. Then when you go to the hospital and you're dealing with these doctors, they tell you, hey, here are the 10 things that could happen, might happen, and none of them are good. Mm-hmm. They're all terrible. And so at that point, it's like, Steph, I'm only going to focus on next step, because if I think of these 10 things, it's too overwhelming. Mm-hmm. It is just way too overwhelming. And we've kind of done that with our podcast, our radio show, our professional life as well. It's like, okay, if I think of all these things that might happen or we have to do, it's so overwhelming. And so we just came to the conclusion, we're going to trust God for the next step. And one of the scriptures we kind of anchored ourselves to was where it talks about the word of God as a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. Yeah. So when you think of a lamp, you can't see like the entire room when you're holding it. You can just see kind of what's in front of you. And so that's what we relied on. Okay, we're just going to trust God for the next step. When they tell me whatever terrible thing might happen, we're just going to believe God and we're going to trust for the next step. That's it. I'm not going to focus on the 10 things that might happen or could happen. We're just going to focus on the next step. And that is really what helped us get through that and a lot of other things we've been through, quite honestly.
That's good. So certainly you've been, like you're saying earlier, when one's down, you pick the other one up. And certainly through the early parts of your marriage with all that was going on with Steph, Kevin, you were always there by her side and all that. But I want to make sure our listeners know you're not perfect. So I want you...
No, he's not.
Why would we do that, Robert?
He's not perfect.
This was going so well until you said that. Like, you're going to edit this, right?
Okay. So, I'll start first. That's how you're
So hold on, wait. Part of the entertainment value of the book for me was some of the bonehead moves that you made. That made me feel so good about myself. And so I'd love for you, and we'll start with Steph. I think Steph should share this, about the bowling incident.
Oh, yeah, this was great.
You guys, please, have mercy.
So Robert's reading this like, this guy is clueless.
We should have been by his side 20 years ago, honey. He could have used our help.
You too. Yes.
Okay.
So
you start.
I just had brain surgery. All right. They wheel me in my room and I don't not feeling the best, right?
Is there a t-shirt going to be made with this too?
We will have
That's a good idea.
That is a good idea. There's a keychain. So not feeling the best. My husband decides he's bored of sitting in my room. He hadn't been there that long.
I needed fresh air.
Let's be honest. He wanted fresh air.
I needed it.
So he goes and bowls. Then after he bowls his high game, he goes and takes himself out to eat. He thought he needed rewarded after he went bowling.
Well,
I
that's what
was
you do.
in my hospital room for 6-7 hours, and I'm like, where is my husband? He comes back. I'm like, where have you been? Babe, been bowling. It's been great. I bowled my best game ever.
He doesn't even lie about it.
He's trying to hit me so I can talk.
I need to get my version of the
No.
story.
I'll let you go, Kevin, because I want you to be able to defend yourself.
So
Thank you.
then I was like, okay, did you get something to eat? He's like, with Chipotle. I sat on the patio. Yep, sat on the patio. It was such a beautiful day. I'm in my hospital bed, and I'm like, did you bring me any Chipotle? Oh, no. I'm like, okay. So I don't know how you defend that.
So
How do
this
you
is
defend that?
so the women obviously will be able to empathize with Steph, but Kevin
Yes.
definitely had a good reason.
No.
I want to hear this great
This is
reason.
for the guys. This is for the guy that's
I don't know if
listening.
it's
This is
good,
for the husband
but
that's listening.
here is my rationale.
Yeah, let's
all right?
hear this.
Okay, so I had been in this hospital room for like 5 days
hours.
straight.
You had
5 days straight.
not.
We were in the hospital for 7 days.
We were not.
Yes, we were. It was a full week. It was a full week at the hospital.
Were you there together?
We were not.
Okay. So I had been sleeping on this couch for 5 days. I had been in this hospital for 5 days, and you can't open up the window. You can't open up the window in these hospital rooms to get fresh air. I needed to get out. I just had to get out. All right. So I asked Steph, like, "Hey, do you mind if I go out?" And I just got a brand new bowling ball. Brand new bowling ball.
He asked me when I was sleeping. Just so you
Drugged
know.
up.
And
I was
so-
asleep.
Morphine.
So
Yes!
Steph was like, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." And it wasn't like, "Hey, are you sure? Are you positive?" It was like when she said yes, I heard it, and it was like,
No,
"See ya!"
you
right?
ran
And I'm like,
there
out the
before
door.
she could even finish. Yes, you were out that
Oh, yeah.
door.
Change your mind.
It's like Looney
So I go to
Tunes.
the bowling alley. Yeah, so I go to the bowling alley. My brand new bowling ball. Never had one before, and so I bowled. What was it, 207, 209, something like that.
It was amazing.
And I am like on
Right?
cloud 9. I am so excited that it was a bucket list item to bowl 200 in my lifetime. And I just did it with this new ball, all right, that I paid $35 for. so I was so excited. So on my way home, I'm like, you know what? I need to go celebrate. Why don't I stop here at Chipotle? Steph's probably sleeping. She doesn't need
doesn't want
me.
anything
Just
to eat.
she doesn't need anything. She's got the hospital food
Oh gosh.
that they're taking care of her.
Oh yeah, the hospital food.
So
Good stuff.
I'm out there, and I just go out on the patio, and I mean,
Loving life.
I'm loving life. I actually got chips and guac to go with it because I was so
geez.
excited.
He's
And I
just
kept
camping
thinking
out
like,
there, Steph.
yes,
He is. He had a good day.
yes, just thinking like, oh my gosh, I need to join a bowling league now. Like how good could I possibly be if I bowled like once a week with
Oh my
an
god.
actual real ball? So, but then I did get back to the hospital, and immediately Steph was like, "Where did you go? Where have you been?" Because I was gone probably 4 or 5
You
hours.
were gone like 6 or 7.
And I told her I'd gone to Chipotle, and then she asked me, "Did you get me anything?" And immediately I'm like, "Oh, that's not good.
Oops.
No, that was awful because it didn't even cross my mind one time that I should bring."
That burrito was so good, Steph.
I was,
I tried it.
because literally I was thinking about
Me.
bowling
Yeah,
and the 200
you.
score the whole time.
Yeah.
So
And Steph's
not
got hospital
that was
food. 'Cause
absolutely
You know how good that is.
yes, absolutely
Delicious.
not one of my better moments in life. That was the epic fail on my end.
So
So again, thank you for bringing that up, guys.
I got a question which leads into that.
All right.
Because it says in the book, because
Uh-huh.
I need advice on this. It says in the book when you're
And you're coming to us for this?
Steph was pregnant. Yeah, Steph was pregnant with the first child, and you wanted the birthday to be on such.
Oh
a day.
yeah.
And so you had her walking around Target and jumping on the trampoline and drinking castor oil and all that stuff. So I want to know, like, how do you talk Steph into these things? Because I cannot talk my husband into things. As soon as I ask him, honey, can we? What do you think? No. It's always no. So how do you talk Steph into these things? I need to learn here.
Kaylee, it's so interesting because when we were writing this book, I'm like, why did I agree to that? Like the whole time, I'm like, why? I think I was so done being pregnant. I'm like, I'll try anything.
Desperate.
I'll try it
So-
all. But then at the end, like after walking Target, like I was in so much pain. My back hurt, my legs hurt. I was like, well, that wasn't good. And then the castor oil, y'all know what happens with castor oil. Like, I was miserable. And then Kevin's like, you okay? Okay in there? I'm like,
So
yep.
the context was, I'm a numbers guy. I'm a numbers guy. And I thought, okay, if our daughter had a birthday of 9, 10, 11, right? Like, that would be super cool. Like, I would have zero issues remembering that for the rest of my life. 9, 10, 11.
Well, you just have to remember what month she was born, though.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. So
Very true.
9, 10, 11, I'm like, that would be amazing. But I also didn't want to run the risk of it being her born on 9/11, because that would feel like unpatriotic or something, right? If our daughter was on a 9/11 baby. But so it was on the 9th, or I think it was on the 9th.
Mm-hmm.
We decided, hey, let's try to start this labor and delivery process. And so we went to Target, and Steph's walking around Target and like, let's get this moving. And then how long were we walking? An hour?
At least
an hour. Okay. And then I decided, okay, this isn't working. So I went into the sporting goods section and got some weights.
Oh,
And I brought the weights out. So here's this 9-month pregnant lady with these pink
You'll
weights
do anything for him, won't you?
I will.
doing laps around Target. And I'm
Oh,
like
geez.
her personal trainer, motivational
Are
speaker
you
behind
yelling
her.
at her? Hurry it up.
Oh,
Steph,
yeah.
hurry it up,
Oh, yeah.
faster,
I'm like, Steph.
faster. Up to.
I'm like, Steph, I know you're in pain right now, but hey, as soon as you've seen this baby, you're not going to remember any of this pain. It's going to go away.
You can start a personal training business and just use
Oh, my
Target as
gosh.
your gym.
Like I was totally like Anthony Robbins at that moment, just trying to coach Steph. We are going to do this. And it just made Steph exhausted. That's really all it did.
It did. And in pain. Yep.
And
Tired
then-
and in pain.
Then round 2 was the castor oil. And so we got home, and this was like an old wives' tale, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, hey, if you drink the castor oil, it'll start the labor process. And so we poured it in orange juice, and then we poured the oil on top. And come to find out, those don't mix.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So the oil just sat on top of
It's like
the
a black
orange
and
juice.
tan.
Yes.
Oh yes.
Yes.
And so Steph's trying to stir it in the glass, and then chugged it like a champ,
That's right, I did.
and then that just made her sick.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
And
she
have
doesn't-
to, yeah.
She doesn't even get upset with you or anything. She just goes right along with it. That's
Well, she was. I think honestly, I think she was just in so
Delirious.
much pain,
Delirious.
and she was ready to have this baby. It's like, sure, let's do it.
What else can we do?
But when I'm actually writing this, I'm like, I am completely cuckoo. Why did I do that? It makes no sense. It makes zero sense now. But
Hindsight's
yeah,
20/20.
that was and,
Yes.
and I was so excited. We were both so excited about being rookie parents and meeting this girl. But no, she came 12 days later, so none of that worked.
Didn't work.
Okay.
None of it
At
worked.
least it
Nope.
wasn't 9/11.
maybe you postponed it.
Yes.
Yeah, it could have been.
You wore out
Maybe we
Steph
did.
that she needed to.
Is this what humans
to have
eat?
The baby.
Yeah, she probably understand.
Yeah. But then the second child, without any intervention, was 6, 9, 15, which is easy to remember because 6 plus 9 equals 15.
All right.
So
Look at that numbers guy.
that helped me out.
Yeah, I wasn't
Yep.
sure where you're going with that. So numbers guy.
Yes.
So as we're kind of, we could go on forever, but we got to start winding down here. But with all the stuff that you guys have gone through, and couples in general, or just people in general, sometimes we get caught up in the busyness of life and just focusing on the wrong things. And we kind of look back later and go, what were we thinking? I didn't spend time with each other, didn't spend time with the kids. But all the things you've gone through, and you're still young, but what matters most to you guys, the two of you? What matters most in life, and how do you face that?
Well, you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Well, when you talked about earlier the things we've gone through, our perspectives have absolutely changed, completely changed, right? And there's, of course, the books and the sayings, don't sweat the small stuff. But when you go through the stuff, the things that we may have gotten upset about years ago, whether it's I forgot to take the trash out to the curb, right? Or I went bowling after you got electrocuted, right? Stuff like that. Your perspective changes, and and the small you don't sweat the small stuff, right? Because we're so privileged, we're so appreciative of having a family, right?
Mm-hmm.
That Steph and I are both now completely healed, completely restored. We have 3 healthy kids that doctor said may never happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so our perspective has changed in regards to, does this really matter, right? And, we just celebrated our 18th anniversary 2 weeks ago.
Congratulations.
And it was just like, thank you. It's just like, thank you, God, that we're here, that we're able to see this, right? It's just your perspective changes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Sometimes, life's still hard.
It is, yeah.
Still hard. And, if it's not what we went through, it's something else. Is it finances? Is it another injury? Is it our kids screaming at the top of their lungs? Like, you're still exhausted. You're still tired. Life stresses still come at you. But at the end of the day, we have a family.
Mm-hmm.
We love each other. We're in this for the long haul. And you just take a step back. And you're like, man, we're so blessed. We're so blessed. Yes, it's hard, but it's so fun because sometimes Kevin and I, like, our kids are screaming and we're trying to get them to bed and we just look at each other and we just are like, this is our life. Mm-hmm. It's crazy, but we're so thankful for it. Yeah. And it's pretty great.
Yes.
You're thankful that you have kids that are screaming and crying.
Yes. Your perspective changes. Your perspective absolutely changes.
And they're healthy.
Like, thank you, God. Yes. Thank you, God, that we get to discipline these kids. Thank you, God, that we're living in this chaotic life. Thank you, God, that we get to do this together.
Well,
and it's pretty awesome.
Telling the story of your perspective changed when your cycle came back after getting electrocuted, and you hadn't had it for months.
Yeah, I hadn't had it for months, and, I remember coming out of that operating room, and I asked the doctor right away, did my cycle start? I hadn't had it for years, probably 3 or 4 years at that point. Wow. And he said, Stephanie, you just got out of surgery. And I'm like, okay. And a month later, it was the morning, and it was Monday morning, and I went to the bathroom after I got up, and my cycle started, and I just sobbed. I hadn't had it for so long, and I was so excited. I went to the grocery store. You guys, I could not have filled my cart with more feminine hygiene products. It was amazing.
She was just like plopping it on the counter, so excited.
Anybody want to see what I'm buying right now? I was so proud. It was and I had the worst cramps. I was so sick, and I loved every second of it because that was something that was taken away from me. And I got it back. And I was so thankful. Ever since, that happened, perspective changes. Yeah, and it's pretty amazing. But people take for granted. I'm sure people, when their legs hurt, people in wheelchairs would love to have their legs hurt. Mm-hmm. They would love to have that. So
when it's gone, it's like, oh, man, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. No matter what, pain you're going through, thank God you get to experience pain because that means you're still living life. Absolutely. So.
Well, that's a great message. Your book has such a great message because too many times in marriage, we do sweat the small stuff and our conflict over the stupid things like green chili.
Yeah.
That's in our book. Having an argument over green chilies, a vegetable. But yeah, absolutely. When you go through some big things like that. So, hopefully as people are listening, they don't have to go through the big things, but just reading the book to just really ask the question, what really matters most, and don't sweat the small stuff.
Well, and I think you guys are such an encouragement to everybody that it can be done. With life challenges, you can overcome that. You stayed married, you have kids. There's like so many miracles, I couldn't even begin to count them. And it's just very touching and inspirational, and that you're willing to share that. Because so many people might be dealing with one of your challenges, let alone all of them. So I hope this encourages them.
So what do you pray, as we close up, what do you pray happens with this book, the message overall?
Did you say New York Times bestseller? Right? That's what we're praying for, Robert.
All right.
I pray it really encourages people, right? Mm-hmm. Because life is tough, right? And the book is kind of a roadmap of, hey, here's how we got through it. Here's how we rely on our faith to get through some of these life-threatening situations. And I mean, it's heavy stuff that we've gone through, but we share it with our personality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny throughout, and Robert, I appreciate you saying how you laugh throughout, but there's so many funny things that happen during those times, like the dumb stuff people say to you when they find out you have cancer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's, I don't know, just really, I pray it impacts people because,
Mm-hmm.
you know, one of the messages we've received was someone reached out and said their father had just been diagnosed with the same type of cancer that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And we were the first message they've heard that was actually positive, because all the doctor's reports, everyone they've talked to, it was negative situation. So I pray that this encourages other people as well to trust God to get through these really difficult times.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you're already impacting people, and I'm sure it's going to impact more people. And I've already recommended this book to a couple people that we're going through some stuff. And I said, this will keep you entertained, but also give you hope and encouragement. So definitely hits the mark on that. Kevin and Steph, just thank you so much for being on the show.
Yes, thank you.
And I know we got the links to your website and the podcast and the book on there, but how do you want people to follow you or connect with you?
So they can go to kevinandsteph.com, and you can access our book that way. We have all of our podcast episodes there. We've got video clips as well. You can also go to anywhere where you get your podcasts. You can get it, whether it's Spotify,
Apple
Podcast app, Google. But kevinandsteph.com is probably the best place.
All right, thanks. And as you're listening, obviously, if you're still listening, and obviously you are because you're hearing this, share this with somebody that can use some hope and encouragement. This is a great story that everybody needs to hear. And
it has a happy ending. You know,
it
I love
has a happy ending.
endings.
Absolutely. Kaylee loves happy endings. We got the Hallmark channel. I'm like, every time she's got a Hallmark movie on, I'm like, is this like the same movie?
Oh my gosh, that's Kevin!
Robert, don't get me started.
That's Kevin.
Hey, unless you want to talk about conflict again. You want to see conflict in real life? Start talking about Hallmark
honey, I
movies
think you
here.
hit a touchy button with Kevin over there.
I'm like, can we just watch this movie last night and the
I'm
night
with
before? So
It's okay. It's all
yeah,
good.
so go ahead and share this podcast, leave a review, and until next week, God bless, and we'll talk to you then. Thank you for listening to the Power Up Your Marriage and Business podcast. If you found this episode to be valuable, please leave a rating and share it with an entrepreneur couple you know.
Yes, and remember to hit the subscribe button so that you'll get all of our latest episodes, and visit our website, Power Couples by Design, to access a variety of free resources to help your marriage and business, like our weekly videos and on-demand webinars. And don't forget to download our free 8-step guide that you can find on our homepage to help your marriage and business thrive.
We're here to help you build a thriving marriage and a prosperous business. God bless your marriage and business. See you next week.